Hi, in this lesson in Module 4 of Correct Pronoun Usage, I am focusing on classes of pronouns numbers 4 and 5. Class number 4 is the relative pronoun, and class number 5 of pronouns is the intensive and reflexive pronoun. And those types of pronouns, classes 4 and 5, may cause errors in student academic writing, so it's important for us to focus on that in this lesson. Let's look at class number 4 first, which is the relative pronoun. And I have the basic definition of relative pronoun in this slide. A relative pronoun can either connect one clause with another, or it can act as subjects or objects in their own clauses. So we have a two-part definition for relative pronoun that we need to pay attention to. Relative pronouns can refer to people, and I have a list of those there for you to refer back to, and those include who, whom, whose, whoever, and whomever. And again, this list of relative pronouns can refer to people. I do have for you a list of relative pronouns that mostly or primarily focus or refer to things, but can occasionally focus and refer to people, and that relative pronoun is that. And then I do have a list of relative pronouns that refer to things or animals, and those are which, whichever, and whatever. Okay. We do have our first definition of relative pronoun. It can connect one clause with another, and I have a couple of examples here for us. I have two sentences or two independent clauses that I'm going to combine into one complete sentence. So we have one example of our one simple sentence is the chemistry lab is 2 hours long. In another module early on, you learn how to find subjects and verbs. So let's do some practice here together. So let's find our verb. Is our verb. Again, to find the subject, you ask who or what is. Chemistry lab is. So chemistry lab is our subject of the sentence. My next simple sentence is I attend the chemistry lab. Attend is my verb. Who or what attend? I attend is my subject. Now I want to combine both of those simple sentences together to have one complete sentence. So I have my example there. The chemistry lab that I attend is 2 hours long. So I'm combining two sentences into one, and as I combine those two sentences into one, I'm using my relative pronoun that. And I'm using that relative pronoun that to combine those two simple sentences into one complete sentence. Let's look at the next example I have at the bottom of your slide. The equipment was purchased last year. Let's find our verb. Was purchased is our verb of the sentence. Remember, some verbs do have helping verbs. Was is the helping verb in this case. Purchased is the main verb. Both verbs together is the verb of the sentence. Was purchased. Who or what was purchased? Equipment was purchased, so equipment is our subject of the sentence. Our next simple sentence is the equipment will make possible some important research. Let's find our verb. Will make is our verb. We have helping verb will, main verb make. Who or what will make? Equipment is the subject of the sentence. So again, I want to combine these two simple sentences into one using one of our relative pronouns that I mentioned in an earlier slide in this part of our lesson. So let's look at our last sentence at the bottom of the screen that combines both of them. The equipment that was purchased last year will make possible some important new research. So I combine both ideas into one complete sentence using that as our relative pronoun that combines both together. Okay. So again, using relative pronouns to combine ideas help to make more complex sentences, and that's what we're going to strive for in the future, to turn those simple sentences into more complex sentences that have more variety and more sophistication. So that's what we're striving for throughout these modules. Now we have an example of a relative pronoun that can act as the subject or object in its own clause. And just keep in mind, I have in parentheses for you, The relative pronoun and its clause must immediately follow the word that it is related to. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's look at our first example, our series of sentences. And again, I have two simple sentences that I want to combine into a more complex sentence that's going to be a little bit more sophisticated than our two simple sentences. So let's look at our first example. The researcher had a breakthrough. Had is a verb, is our verb of the sentence. Who or what had? Researcher had. Researcher is our subject. He was studying diabetes. Was studying is our verb. We have a helping verb was, main verb studying. Who or what was studying? He was studying, so he is our subject of the sentence. Now I want to combine both ideas into one complete, complex, sophisticated sentence. And I have that example there, and I'm going to use one of our relative pronouns that we learned in earlier on in this particular part of our lesson. The researcher who was studying diabetes had a breakthrough. So who was studying diabetes, if we remember in an earlier module, who was studying diabetes is called an appositive that describes the noun right before it. In this case, researcher is the noun right before the appositive. So we have who was studying diabetes as our appositive, and in the appositive, who is our relative pronoun that comes right after the noun in which it modifies. In this case, it's researcher. Okay? Let's look at our second example. The florist created the flower arrangement. Created is our verb. Who or what created? Florist created. Now, our next simple sentence, she called us last weekend. Called is our verb. Who or what called? We have to ask that question to find our subject of the sentence. She called. Excuse me. So we have our two simple sentences. Now we're going to combine both simple sentences into one sophisticated, more complex sentence. The florist, which florist, who called us last weekend, created the flower arrangement. So who called us last weekend describes who the florist is, which was a part of one of our simple sentences. So we have that clause that's being led by a relative pronoun who, that's describing the noun right before it. In that case, it's florist. Okay. Now, since we went over briefly relative pronouns, I want to shift gears to our fifth class of pronouns, which is the intensive and reflexive pronouns. Again, it's important for us to focus on this type of pronoun or this class of pronoun because it may cause some errors in academic formal writing. So I want to go over briefly with you this type of pronoun. Okay. So we have the reflexive pronoun, which is class number 5 of 6 classes of pronouns that I mentioned in part number 1 of this module. It's used when the action of the sentence is done by the subject to him or herself. So I have a series of examples here for us to look at, just 3 of them. Let's look at our first example. We ordered the picture ourselves. Who ordered the pictures? We ordered them ourselves. Nobody else did them. So ourselves is our reflexive pronoun that we're making a connection to we. Okay. Our next example, they tried to bring themselves to the game. Who'd they try to bring to the game? Themselves. So this action is being done by they, which is our subject of our sentence. So they're doing the action themselves. And our last example, I did the work myself. So who did the work? I did the work myself. I'm making reference to myself in this sentence. So I'm using my reflexive pronoun myself to indicate that. Now we do have intensive pronouns, which is still a class number 5 of pronouns. They stress or emphasize another noun in the sentence. Let's look at our first example of intensive pronouns being used. The girls helped themselves to the lipstick that was sitting on the counter. Who the girls help? Themselves to the lipstick. Maria took the notes herself. Who took those notes for Maria? No one else did but herself. So herself is our intensive pronoun that emphasizes another noun, in this case Maria, in the sentence. Let's look at our third example. The teacher himself picked today's assignment. Who picked today's assignment? The teacher picked, but we're going to have emphasis on that teacher picking the assignment himself. So we're going to use our intensive pronoun himself to stress or emphasize the teacher as our noun in the sentence. So as you can see with our fifth class of pronouns, the relative pronoun, intensive and reflexive pronouns, again, they may cause issues and errors in academic writing. So it's important for us to focus and also learn these types of pronouns so that we won't make these mistakes in our academic writing, which may be costly to us when we go into English composition course.